Welcome to the Porsche Club Insider, your one stop for all things Porsche and PCA. Here's your host, Vu Nguyen, and the Insider crew.
Hello everyone and welcome to our 75th episode of Porsche Club Insider. We are at PCA headquarters. We are getting ready to head out for Works Reunion. By the time this comes out, we'll probably be getting on a plane shortly to see everyone in Monterey.
Got one more podcast to record before we
one more to go.
Head out.
So around the table we have Manny. Of course we have Robert Forsyth at the controls, and we have a very dear friend, special guest, one who confesses that he listens to a lot of podcasts, but I believe this is your very first time being on a podcast.
Yep, I've never been on one before. I've listened to so many. Long commute.
So we have Casey Parkin, Porsche Silver Spring, certified sales manager, and longtime car nut. I think I have a photo of you and I, Casey, and I believe this is from back in 2009.
Look at those sideburns.
Do you remember this?
Really, I don't remember having that hairline, but I do. Oh boy!
Oh boy!
You remember that waist?
Hey, Manny!
I like those glasses. That's
I know,
good.
right?
Oh, wow. Bringing them up, man. Bringing them up.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Is that Gregory in the background?
It is Gregory in the background. It was a much lighter version of me. I actually had glasses, a lot more hair, but we've gone through a lot together. We've been around for a while.
For sure, buddy. No, that's back. I started working for Porsche Silver Spring in October, November 2006. So I'm coming up on 17 years. And back then, that was around 2009. I did some marketing work with TPC Racing, Mike Harris and Tom up in Jessup. I still talk to all of them repeatedly, and I can even talk about some of the work that they helped me with on the Classic project that we're going to get into today.
Very good. Yeah, I think that one, it was like an open house, and you brought up I think you brought up we hadn't seen a Panamera Turbo, and you brought one up, and it had the wing that kind of came up and folded out like a transformer.
Yeah, that's when I used to put the wings up on the back of cars. I grew out of that phase, thankfully.
All right, so before we get into the restoration program and sort of what you've been up to in the past 17 years at Porsche Silver Spring, let's catch up and talk about what we did last week.
I think it is worth noting that Damon is still on the podcast. He's missed the past. I feel like we haven't had him on a while because I keep on wanting to update on some of the videos. But this time he's out in Chicago doing 4 1-mile reviews.
Yep.
So he'll have a lot to say.
He's filling
next
up
week.
that bucket of 1-mile reviews.
Yes. They seem like pretty exciting cars.
Yep.
That he's going to do.
So we will see him probably at Works. Will he be here for next Monday's podcast?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll see him before Works. For me, it's been a lot of stuff going on since our last podcast. As a parent, I just got to say, I sent off my daughter. You all know that she bought an MDX from Nathan Mers, our dear friend, and that car was only supposed to initially go from Washington State to Salt Lake City, but because she had to bring her dog home this summer, we actually had to drive the MDX from Salt Lake City to Maryland, and then last Monday morning, she and her boyfriend and her doggy went back to Salt Lake City, and as of today, they are on their last leg. He's driven, I think, 1,400 miles so far. They are in North Platte, Nebraska right now, which is the same location in which, if you remember, where we broke down. So, knock on wood, they've got another 700 miles or so to go. And as a parent, when the car was with me, I tried to go through it as much as I could. It's an 08 MDX with over 220-some thousand miles. Obviously I had to clean it, had to do paint correction on it, had to do the brakes, had to do brake flush. I changed out fog lights.
Does she maintain it? Because
no.
So this is the only paint correction it's going to have
until I
see it again.
Until I see it again, and change the oil. I didn't bring it in, but we have this common problem of the gasket around the oil filter housing tends to dry out and leak like crazy. So the car used to leak, but now it's much better. And even though you go through everything on a car, still when you send your kid off to go across the country, it's a little nerve-wracking. But
there are a few cars more reliable than an MDX, so I think you chose the right one.
Wasn't reliable on the way back.
And And that it wasn't the MDX's fault. It was that one nut. It was the one nut on the power steering.
Every Honda owner said it's never the car's fault.
But thank goodness she allows me to follow her with the Find My iPhone app. So every half an hour I refresh, and she's like, "Dad, you're pretty much stalking me." I'm like, "Of course I'm stalking you, because
You just have to hide the air tag in the glove box.
No, Find My iPhone is pretty accurate." Right. And she's like, "I was just about to text you that I got into Nebraska." I'm like, "Oh, I know you're in Nebraska."
Yes, you are a helicopter parent.
I am. I just want her to get there safe. Another big thing in the PCA family, I am now not the newest Porsche owner. I don't have the nicest Porsche anymore. That title goes to my mom. My mom retired, and she's always wanted to.
I thought you had a lot of relatives that had nicer Porsches than you. Well, that's very subjective.
My immediate family. My mom recently retired, and thank you to Porsche of Long Beach. They set her up originally, and Casey and I talked about this. Like, she's coming from a GLC 300 Mercedes, and I said, "Mom, you really should check out a Macan or a Macan T." She went there, and she made. I wouldn't say a mistake, but she did the thing where if you try one of the nicer versions, you're going to fall in love with it. And she saw the chalk Macan S. She loved the color. She loved the red brakes. Oh, and she loved the speed. So she says, "How about a Macan S?" I'm like, "Mom, I can't talk you down to a standard Macan or Macan T. Once you've had a taste of that, you're done." So on the driveway, she now has a beautiful
chalk. So now you have a car to drive when you
that's what I'm hoping. She always offers up her car when I'm in the West Coast, so maybe I'll be able to do a few Orange Coast or LA region events in her Macan S. That'd be kind of cool.
I like about that Macan. One thing I never liked about the Macans is that black blade they have on the side of the doors. You know.
Oh yeah. The trim. This one doesn't have it. This one has it.
It's body colored.
Yeah, it's body colored. Yeah. She's very happy. You can see her waving, and she's got a big smile on her face.
She looks happy.
Yeah. But not to be undone, I also did purchase a Porsche this Saturday, a 911, a Porsche Design Edition. I don't know if Robert can pull it up here. There it is. Nice. To add to my
$50.
Exactly. I added it to my collection.
The depth of field in that shot.
I thought you were buying it for the juniors program.
No, I bought it for the VU program to go with my collection in the basement.
You don't have enough.
I know it's
hoarding stuff.
It's an addiction, but I saw the lineup and I didn't have the most, a more modern version of it, because when each of my kids were born, I bought them one, and this one just kind of will continue to be added to the collection. I know. Why are you giving me that look of disappointment? It was $50.
Oh, that's the.
I like the 959 in the background. Yeah, that was a good one.
And turns out it was a local PCA member, Potomac Region member, Sven. Thank you very much for hosting me.
When you have grandkids, are you going to?
They can ride it. They can ride it.
We'll see.
They can ride it as long as they don't scratch it.
I had a sacrificial one that my kids grew up with, and that one they would run down the driveway and bang around. It didn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
The other ones that I have stayed in perfect mint condition.
So see, I'll probably do the same thing. There will be ones that they can use and ones that stay mint. But I did do some true car stuff, and this was to prepare and to come to the unveiling at Porsche Silver Spring for your special car, which was I wanted to take out my Turbo Look cab, but the ET light. After 40 years, the studs on my ET light broke. And so now I had a floppy ET light on the back. And if you've never seen how that is assembled, it's just like plastic pieces with metal studs in it. And I guess from hanging there the way that it does, after time, it just cracks. So I'm sure you can buy a brand new one, but VU being VU, I wanted to see if I can fix it and make sure I make the event. A tool I bought maybe a year or so ago that I hadn't had the opportunity to use, but I highly recommend you get one, is a plastic welder.
I got to get one of those.
Plastic welder. That thing is magic. So they give you an assorted number of staples. You put it onto the two leads of the plastic welding gun, and when you pull that trigger, it makes the staple light up with heat, and basically it goes through any plastic like butter. And then when you release the trigger, it basically mends the plastic with the metal. And I would bet that even though my repair is ugly, thankfully it's underneath the plastic housing, but it's strong. It is solid. I put at least 3 staples.
Do they not make the parts?
Oh, they do make the parts. I just didn't get a new one because I'm cheap, and I wanted the challenge to fix it.
How much did the plastic welder cost?
The plastic welder's like $60, $60, $90, something like that. Yeah, and the new piece, I gotta imagine it's probably at least a couple $100. And I will also tell you, you need baby hands to be able to unbolt the ET light off of your whale tail.
Because you think you have Hawk hands?
Well, I mean, my big chubby fingers barely got in there.
It looks good from here.
But yeah, once it's all done and reassembled.
Now that you're in that area, you can start working on the top.
No, it's the original top, and just leave it.
It doesn't.
Why you got to go there?
It's not the Shroud of Turin. You don't have to leave it like that. You can make it nice and pretty.
They look great. My dad asked me, he's like, "What's 1 of 16 about that?"
There you go.
So I had to explain it to him.
Yeah,
Looked great.
Yeah,
looked awesome.
How about you, Manny?
We did Cars and Coffee, and then we went from there to the Chesapeake Region Concord Judging School.
Oh,
which I know sounds very exciting, but it was actually interesting to see. It was about 20-some people, which I was surprised for Concord judging, which isn't like autocrossing, isn't exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a subset of people that love to keep their cars super clean, and there was even a smaller subset that wanted to learn how to judge these cars and what to look for, and so several veterans were there, and Chesapeake's trying to change the rules a little bit where you don't touch the car. So it's kind of like at Parade, they have preservation where you look at the car, but you don't touch it. There you're judging all the originality. Here you're not judging originality. You're just judging cleanliness without touching it.
So they're going to have to work on efficiency as multiple judges on a car need to see
because any veteran judge will tell you that they have their go-to places.
Right.
Like for me, I split the seams of the seats, and if there's no dirt, then I know this guy or gal prepared it seriously.
Yeah.
So I'll learn that for next week.
Yeah, as soon as I see dirt, I'm like, you know what? They're not going to win, but I'm not going to hammer them that hard.
Sure.
But I know they didn't prepare.
Casey, you should have us come over and just judge your car just for fun to see what we find.
It's going to Bob
Bob
Miller.
See,
Friday
it's interesting
morning.
because what our next, they said their next session is about prepping your car for Concours. And one of the things, and they're doing it at a detail shop, but they were quick to say that detailing will not win you a Concours.
Absolutely not.
It makes it look pretty, but a Concours, they're looking in crevices.
Yeah.
Details like putting makeup on, I guess.
Yeah.
It's great, but you gotta
well,
go
detailing will get your car along the right path, but it's not the end of the story.
90% of the people out there, it'll satisfy.
Yeah.
Like Project 964, we got it ceramic coated. Looks beautiful. I wouldn't enter it in the Concours because we didn't do anything for Concours prep.
No.
But just looking at it, looks great. It looked great at a parade because they weren't judging it.
Sometimes judges are looking for some of the craziest stuff. Like I remember when I first started Concoursing my turbo look, they were looking inside the seat rails, they were looking under the dash, they were looking for lint in the glove box.
Like the Boxster, the Boxster,
crazy.
If you take the top down enough, it forms wear marks, especially when it's down and it's
sure.
Yeah, always park it closed.
And the creases.
It's rubbing.
Yeah.
It just has wear marks.
Yeah.
And so they ask, how do you do that? Do you say, well, he's using it, so we shouldn't take parts? And the consensus was this is a Concours, so if you're serious about winning, then basically you don't take your top down or you replace the top. And I use my 914 as an example. I said, this is original paint. I know the car is not going to win at a Concours, traditional Concours, but I'm not going to repaint this car just to win a trophy. It's going to stay original paint with the chips, and I'll live with a third place in the traditional Concours.
And that's why, like Bob Gutjahr in his Speedster, never takes the top down because he doesn't ever want it to crease. He doesn't ever want it to wear.
I think I took the top down more on that car than he did.
Without him knowing. You cost him a trophy.
Well, he left a manual in the seat, so.
All right. So Gregory and I, we ended up, thank you for the invite, Casey, and a lot of PCA and Chesapeake and Potomac region members came up, and of course your customers. There was a good collection of cars right as we pulled up. I loved that GT4, and I think it was Eratium green?
There was a Spider.
Oh, Spider, the Spider, yeah.
So I built that car. I do one paint to sample special car per year. My first one I did was, I think it was in 2016. I did an Arena Red 911 Turbo S Coupe because I was a kills bugs fast guy.
Sure.
That was my era. I was 14 years old when that came out. Still have the poster at home. And then I did subsequently other cars throughout my history of not necessarily cars that customers had picked out, colors that customers had picked out, because I've done a number of greens and such, but I wanted to do something a little different. I did a Brewster Green Targa GTS that a great customer of mine now owns. I did a Mir Blau, paying homage to Jeff Swart because I love his taste in that color. And we had an old 2003 Cayenne color. I did a Mir Blau GT4, and then I did the Eratium Green Spider for stock.
Yeah, that was a gorgeous car.
And it's just that car with silver wheels just.
What do you think?
So great.
What percentage of customers order color? Not like a gray or black or red. I mean, even red. Let's say red's included as a color. What percentage, roughly?
So I build, I would say 95% of the cars for our dealership. And Porsche, a couple of years ago, actually about a year ago, they did away with dark blue. So you can't. You can get it in a Cayenne. Algarve, I think, is the shade. But all of the other cars, dark blue doesn't exist anymore. So the transitions that they're making, I think, make it a little bit more difficult for customers. I actually have a paint to sample Panamera Turbo S E Hybrid Sport Turismo in dark blue metallic coming in. It's got to be one of the most expensive ones ever built. It's like
dark blue metallic as a paint to sample color.
Absolutely.
And that used to be.
That's used to be a normal color, and
color.
we've actually had a lot of demand for that. And I've expressed my sentiments with the factory, but they have to do all kinds of planning in advance, and they see trends and sorts of things happening. So I can't really fault them for the decisions that they make. But a dark blue is great, and I'm happy they brought it back on the 24 Cayenne. But to answer your question, I would say maybe about 30% of the cars that are sold are actual colors, not out of the traditional German color palette.
Yeah, I mean,
at least that we experience.
I know we all love the colors, and people love.
Well, especially it's coming back now.
Colors.
Those sorts of things.
But then I wonder, when it comes to signing on a dotted line, how many people say I can live with a certain color?
And that's not just Porsche. I mean, when we were in Germany and even on U.S. roads, if you just come to a stoplight and just look around you, cars are gray, silver, black, maybe white. I mean, it's a very monotone palette.
And I have 2 Grand Prix white Porsches, so I'm not the guy to talk about it.
Well, that's the winning color. So.
White is the lightest and fastest Porsche color.
It's all factory race cars coming
100%.
Now, you also had a very unique color GT3 in the delivery room.
Mint. Yeah.
Mint, right?
So, mint green?
Yeah. It was a showstopper.
And we had I'm not sure if the Touring was there or not, but we had the
Touring was there on the corner.
Yeah, jet green.
Yeah.
One of my clients, John, did a really bespoke Boxster GTS, one of the 2.5 liter cars, in jet. And another client of ours saw it and said they wanted that, so we did it's jet green with wheels and CXX BBS Pearl Gold, which I didn't even know was possible, but Kane Bochter and my colleagues at Porsche Exclusive were happy to help us out with that, and the car turned out great.
So CXX is similar to a market price at a restaurant menu. Where you don't want to know the price if you want it.
Basically, it's anything, from the way that I interpret it, is anything that slows down the process of building a car costs more money. And I'm sure that both of you have been on the floor in Stuttgart. My wife and I were there a few months ago. But it's a remarkably streamlined process, and they can only build so many cars out of Stuttgart in a day. So anything that slows down that process really hinders their ability to produce vehicles. So, and most of those things do take place at Special Wishes, which is they build a car. They build a car, and then the car goes to another department, Sonderwunsch, and that's when those big of the CXX changes.
And that looks like a little shop. I mean, I don't think there's lifts.
Not little shop. It's a big shop now.
They've increased capacity significantly.
It's a huge shop now.
But I mean, it's nothing. It's not. There's no line. I mean, there wasn't a factory line when I went. It was just
bays. No, it's bays for sure.
Bays with a cart with parts, and I think it was one person per car. Putting the parts in.
The craftsmanship's amazing, though. It's always great. It's a tremendous. If you folks or listeners have the opportunity to visit the the museum and or the factory in Stuttgart. It's an absolutely amazing experience.
Yeah, and Boris mentioned a bit of this when he was on the podcast a few months ago. Is when efficiencies change, and that's when it becomes, as you said, it's not part of the line, and they have to take the car off and put it into Sonderwunsch, into that special community of mechanics and installers and stuff like that. It changes the efficiency pattern. And I saw the Heritage Package GT3 RS, literally just one gentleman putting on the decal under the wing. We started our meeting, I think, at like 8, and we took a break at around 11. I think he was only 2/3 of the way of putting that lettering on the wing. I mean, he was taking his time to make it perfect, and that was just one little task of the day. And so when you're talking about all these options, it's not just the cost of the vinyl. It's the cost of testing the vinyl, producing the vinyl.
When I was there was no robots.
No.
On the line, there was a lot of robots to help out.
Yeah.
But here, it was all handcrafted.
For sure.
It's like I said, one guy or one gal with the tool, and they were putting this special CXX stuff on the car. It was,
and in some cases, let's say you have a very special door panel or dash option. Sometimes that stuff has to be put on the line with the original. And then once it comes to Sonderwunsch, they actually have to take it off and switch it out.
That's how steering wheels work.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll put a steering wheel on the car, and then they'll take it off at the end of the line.
Yeah.
How many customers do you get very often? So you have the PTS, which is 100 and I can't remember now, 140 maybe colors, something like that.
Year.
Yeah. Now we know we have a swatch about 2 inches thick that has all the colors. And then you have the PTS where you give them the color you want the car painted. Yeah. And that's what, a 2-year process to...
PTS Plus.
Yeah,
so I had a customer, prior to PTS Plus, I had a customer, the same guy with the jet green Boxster. He was the first guy, at least in the modern era, to get Porsche to accept Nogaro Blue, which is an Audi color from the early 2000s. I guess you could maybe say it was on the RS2, but it was called Nogaro Blue in 2000 when the B5 RS4 came out. It's his favorite color. So he worked, even previous to me working with him, at that point, a lady named Melissa Vidic at Porsche.
I remember Melissa. Yeah.
And they got the color approved, but it took 12 months, 14 months to get it approved. But PTS Plus is an interesting program because you're able to get a color that's to your spec. Like colors in the past that stick out. They've changed names, but like they did a Pantone a couple of years ago. I have to believe that was one of them because Porsche wouldn't color a Pantone shade. But in doing that, you also, somebody will certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you're the only person that gets that color for a defined amount of time, be it a year or 18 months, something like that. And then Porsche adds that color to the paint to sample spectrum.
Yeah, when they did Club Blau, they told us that generation of car, no one would have it except the Club Coupes. But then
it's a great color blue.
The 991.2s, it became available.
Right.
And so we saw some other, which was pretty cool, seeing like a Speedster in Club Blau.
For sure.
Yeah, they had to recoup the money that at the time they didn't realize it was going to become a PTS Plus color. They thought it would be, well, actually, they made it more involved because they said in PTS, the Club Coupe, they realized that there's going to be a bunch of these cars at shows parked next to each other. So the paint had to match on each car, where
100%.
PTS, the odds are it's going to be the only car with the PTS Plus. So I guess someone at high up said you got to run this like a regular color, which meant testing in cold weather, testing.
Yeah, that's a big deal, and that's why there's
a
a big cost associated with that extra program, for sure.
Yeah, it's not the raw materials of making the color. It's all the testing and engineering behind it because, not everything is painted on the line. Like a bumper set will, be painted at one factory or that the supplier, and it actually is brought together with the car.
For sure.
And so there's many components that are like that. So figuring out the color is one, having the raw materials is one, but getting all these other suppliers that may be spraying that color and getting it all to match and then having it come together, that's why you're paying the big bucks.
Imagine. So you're ordering PTS Plus. It's going to take well over a year. And then that model you want to put it on may not be you're crossing generations of model.
It's possible if you're at the tail end of a particular model.
I was telling Casey that now because of supply chain issues and the way the market is, the member services. You can join PCA if you have an order for a Porsche. And all you got to do is show us the order that you have with the dealer. But now they can't tell us of what year a car is going to be because the dealer doesn't know. And they'll say, I think we're up to 25. It may be a 2025 model by the time it gets built. So, and we're not even sure what it's going to be called. I think when the GT4 RS was coming out, people had orders for it, but they weren't sure what exactly orders were going to be called. They thought it was going to be an RS, but Porsche had confirmed it. So it was.
So there is things dealers can do, which we're instructed to, and it makes good sense because Porsche helps out as well. But there's something called an order demand. So when you have somebody that expresses interest in a vehicle, and you're able to technically build a car in the system, a dealership is able to put in what is called an order demand, where you build a car, or it doesn't even need to honestly have the option content for the client, but it has their name attached to it. And then Porsche also does things like they will then market to these people. They'll send them, hey, thank you, we understand your interest, we're doing our best to fulfill your order within a timely fashion. And that's something that they've changed since pandemic times because of the amount of backup as far as two-door vehicles are concerned, as we discussed earlier. A lot of two-door cars, they have issues producing specifically because of parts, specifically because it's only 2 shifts per day, because Stuttgart is a town. It's not necessarily an industrial area where Leipzig is. So they can only produce so many cars per day for the entire world. And when demand increases for those things, time gets added to the actual time where a client could physically take delivery of a car.
And they have a whole different line for the Taycan, because I read in one of the comments.
And it's amazing.
They said they're building more Taycans. They're forcing Taycan has a whole different line. That's not where the Boxsters are built.
So that was a big focus of my last trip to Germany. We were actually going at lunchtime, roughly, and we did Taycan first. And it was so amazing to see. They actually have the cars on these some sort of pivoting thing. It looks like kind of a halo around the car, where they're able to twist the vehicle to, if I'm not mistaken, like 80 degrees, so they can access the underneath of the car they just twist it as it goes down the line. It's such a cool thing to see. I'm a big process guy. Which we'll talk about here in a minute. But seeing the way that those cars are assembled was pretty exceptional.
It's almost like you're like in a Star Wars factory with all the automated robots and the platforms that move around.
It's super cool.
And I'm pretty sure they can't say, well, let's stop making Taycans this week and we'll make more 911s.
No.
That's a whole different line. So it's not.
Well, the thing with the Taycan line, and I hope I'm not speaking out of school here, but it's able to be stopped and paused, and things are able to be caught up. The 911 and two-door line is not like that. My wife has a better memory at these things than I do, but because I was so blown away when they were giving us these run-throughs. But the Taycan line can be interrupted. The sports car line cannot. So
the sports car line is hung from up top, whereas the Taycan line actually has independent beds that they can pull in and out of the line.
It is such a cool experience. I'm sure that if you go on YouTube, you can see how those cars are produced. I certainly know that you can for two-door cars.
I can only imagine when they built Leipzig, how happy they were because they have so much more room, and bringing the trucks in, it was just in time. Where in Stuttgart or Zuffenhausen, where they built the cars, and that's the same factory they were building from the 50s that they've expanded, and they've had to make things work. And that's why, if you've ever been there, you've seen that bridge where the bodies come over. They're just making this thing fit in the little space they have to make it work, which is pretty incredible that they haven't torn down the factory and just said, let's redo this. And then they're limited by the zoning and the law, like you said,
because
the residential. I found out, like, when they were building the Taycan factory, they had to go underground. They said, I think they could only do 3 stories, and then anything taller would block the amount of wind flow to downtown Stuttgart. So they had to go underground to be able to stay within the zoning. It's
amazing how committed they are to have so much in that area of Stuttgart, because they really have they have no more space. One of the bad things that I've heard, so to speak, is, you remember the Reuter building?
I heard.
So go ahead.
So hopefully I'll get a chance to get maybe one of the bricks, because
2.
2 bricks. Okay, 3 bricks. 3 bricks for here. But that iconic building, and because the square footage that it takes up, they got and that's only a 1-story building and nothing underneath, and they're going to have to get rid of that to make something that is more efficient and more capable.
No, when I was there, we actually had the discussion, and I know a lot of that is covered by historical building law in Germany. So there's a lot of debate as to what's going to happen to that building.
Yeah,
but it certainly is iconic. It's used in all of even the factory photos that we have at our dealership. It's there.
And you've watched shows on Discovery Channel where they like go down under the foundation and then just pick it up and move it. Like that's what I would do. Like I would never tear it down.
You
I
have
would
to get it past all those other buildings.
Yeah, exactly.
So
like I'd somehow figure out to pick it up and move it.
The Germans could figure it out.
And move it into some field and make it into
but it's not like that factory's just like you said, so overbooked with demand, and it's if they could be like Tesla and build a third line on the parking lot and tents, I'm sure they would to fulfill demand, but they can't. So it's still big demand.
Well, let's switch it up and talk about the Porsche Classic Restoration Challenge. Manny and I, and a lot of us here on staff, we've had the opportunity to work with Porsche Classic on a number of projects. We've sort of seen, I remember at Rennsport 3 when we first talked about what we could do together with Porsche Classic and sort of build their brand, within PCA, within the Porsche community. And I remember they had a small little booth at Rennsport 3, and they had a front clip of a 356, which then led to the restoration of the 73T, which we raffled off in 2011. We've done the recently the Classic Club Coupe with them, and it's just great to see how much emphasis there is on classic Porsches and their portfolio. And correct me if I'm wrong, is when from the last production date of a model, so let's say a 996, the last production date of a 996 was 2004, right? 2005. Yeah. So 10 years after that, which would be 2015, the 996 entered into the classic department, which means they take care of continuing to produce and or look at producing additional parts to keep those cars on the roads, because as all of us have heard the quote before, that over 70% of the Porsches ever built are still on the road is because Porsche still supports them. And now or in the last decade or so, the growth with Porsche Classic enables us to have all of these great older cars. And then in the last 3 years, they come up with this challenge for Porsche dealers to participate in. So I'll let you take it from there.
So the first year, a good client of mine had a slant nose. I didn't really do a whole lot of diligence in the program, but we were urged to do something. So on our Instagram page, which is Porsche Silver Spring, we kind of phoned it in. We did some basic servicing on the car because, slant noses are rare. Not everybody sees them. And he just bought the car and it didn't come with a lot of history. So it was important for us to do a proper baseline.
That's option code 505. Yep. 505.
So before 87, it was special wishes. Once 86, 87 hit, it became 505. So it's a cool car. Not many people see them. It was a really interesting vehicle that Porsche pulled off the line, moved over to Works One, and then they literally took the front fenders off the car and put the 935 type bodywork on the car to make it more interesting. So we didn't really do much with that. There were a lot of people took it seriously. There was a big competition that people moved towards, but honestly, it wasn't a focus for us. Last year in 2022, a guy approached me, actually in probably around when we met, 2008, 2009, and that wasn't last year, of course, but I said to him, he had a 968, and I said, if you ever decide to sell that car, please talk to us. So January of 2022, we were actually looking to do a 914, and it kind of fell through. And at the last minute, this guy showed up. My colleague at work, Adrian, guy said you talked to him, 14 years ago about selling you his 968. And I said, I kind of remember, don't really though. So it kind of makes sense. So anyway, I got in touch with him. It was this guy named Dave, really great PCA member, local guy, and he sold us his car, 157,000 mile 3-owner car. I actually was able to find the original owner. She was based out of Florida at the time. I think she lives in Texas now, but super honest, 3-inch thick binder of service records, which I love cataloging and going through all that stuff. But we basically we left it kind of stock. We did a little bit to it. The paint on the car was all original, other than the hood and the driver's side fender. We repainted the plastic parts because they were yellowing, as old 90s plastic parts from Porsche do sometimes, especially when the car is Grand Prix white. Went through the engine, did a top end, resealed it, all the belts, water pump, those sorts of things. Upgraded to 17-inch cup wheels, and then converted the brakes to 928 GTS parts. And then the rear end we did 968 MO30, which is the Club Sport option. And then we also did MO30 sway bars and those sorts of things. Basically, we tried to make the car somewhat period correct to what I believed would have been what you could have done in 1994 with the car, with parts that were available off the shelf through Porsche Classic. I think other than maybe other than one or two small parts, absolutely everything was available, be it in storage facilities in the United States or in Germany, which we were able to get. And then we did really well. Took the car to checked it out in Chicago. Vu here allowed me to borrow his blue Porsche bike, which was a little newer than 1994, which was our car, but definitely period correct. And I stuck it on the top of it, and it got a lot of cool press. There are a lot of people at Porsche like transaxle cars. There was only one other transaxle.
Is that the one we saw at Sports Car Together?
Yep. It was, okay. Yeah. So we did really well at checked it out. We won our region, placed third overall, and so the top three cars got to go to Sports Car Together Fest, where the video that will probably be posted with this, I went into depth in that, but I talked to some folks at PCNA about the underrepresentation of transaxle cars, and my buddy that doesn't work for Porsche anymore, works for Broad Arrow, Ray Schaefer, and a guy named Ramsey Potts that also works at Broad Arrow. He and I we talked for a while about my love for Turbo Cup. My first Porsche driving experience at a race car track was at Beaver Run, and I rode passenger in a 944. My first Porsche was an 89 2.7 liter. Loved the car. I've always loved box fenders. That Radwood era vehicle to me is just where it's at. So I decided at that point that I was going to try to do something with a 944 turbo, which, if you don't know, is a remarkably complicated car. It is so much more complicated than a 968. If you open the engine bay of a Porsche 968 compared to a 944, it's like 1/10 of the parts. So many vacuum lines and such. But we did some research. I found a car that was reminiscent of the way that the Rothmans Turbo Cup cars were originally built. Things like the varnish deletion underneath the car, lightweight stuff, sports seats. I didn't want white, red, or black. I wanted a limited slip differential from the factory. I found a car. I had paid for PPI inspection. I had some family life things going on, so I couldn't fly up to Maine to see it, but we ended up fetching the car, and it got to us in way worse shape than expected, as they often do. So I would probably urge you, if you're not buying a certified pre-owned car from a Porsche dealership, travel. Spend the time to go check the car out. Would I probably have still stuck with this car? Probably, because there weren't many others on the market. We wanted an 86. Cars were way simpler, no airbags, no ABS systems. So big thing with the Challenge is you can't delete safety equipment. So I've had this 996 Cup car Momo steering wheel sitting on my desk for a zillion years, and I always wanted to use it in our projects. We couldn't use it last year because car had an airbag, couldn't delete the airbag. So we were able to really put a spin on it this year, where I spent a whole lot of time doing research as to the direction we wanted to take. I spent time. I went to the Porsche factory, as we just talked about. I went to visit my friends Colin and Tom down at Dossport in Charlottesville. Nobody knows, at least that I'm aware of, nobody knows more about Rothmans Turbo Cup cars than they do. And I also was able to find the 962 that won Le Mans in 1986 And because with our previous project, I did some marketing where we made a sticker and raised a bunch of money for animal rescues. In the 1994, the winner was a Dower 962 with the fat turbo livery. And this year it was the Rothman's car, so everything fit together well. I got to spend time with the current owner of the car, Malcolm Ross. He and his father own it, and the shop out there is called Driving Machines outside of Columbus, Ohio, and was able to spend time with the car digging. And that 80s era of Group C racing is absolutely my favorite. So, getting back to our car, as you saw on the screen there, we spent a whole lot of time upgrading the car, utilizing factory parts. The engine had bore scoring, so Porsche Classic still makes those 2.5 liter 100 millimeter crankcases. So pulled the engine apart, whole bunch of local machine shops that did an awesome job. Please do support your local machine shops because they are going away. Spent a lot of time with them, making sure that everything was balanced and blueprinted. We spun everything. We had the turbocharger rebuilt, replaced all the reservoirs underneath the hood. We did some turbo cup things, like the folks at Dasport were able to provide us with a roll bar that they kind of modeled after the factory Matter bar that came in the car. As you can see there, we spent some time with the suspension. It's all factory Bilstein stuff with factory turbo cup part number springs and perches. And then just a whole lot of vetting the parts, painted the wheels white, painted the intake manifold beige to make sure it looked like the original car when you pop the hood open, which were magnesium parts. And we're just, if I'm not mistaken, the car's being aligned today. Tomorrow is the last official day for the project. And we are going to be sending the car to Chicago for judging in the individualization category. That's a new thing for this year. Last year they had only one category. This year they split it into 3: preservation, restoration, and individualization. And even though our car really pays homage to what the original cars were, it's not what it was. So
Right.
it fits in the individualization category. But we did a full glass out respray of the car. We took some liberties with the livery. It is based on the number 89 Dicom car, which currently resides in California. And we had a shop that's local to us, AAPP in Rockville, did a smashing job putting the livery together. And the livery is done as it was done in the 80s. It's not a print that somebody sticks on the side of the car. It's done with individual pieces of vinyl because I'm a real stickler for originality. And even if the lines aren't exactly straight, being that it was done as it was in 1988 is the most important thing to me.
Back then, they didn't have wraps.
They didn't, man. No, they didn't. And like, if you look at it, there are some lines that aren't perfect. And when I talked to Brett and Tiffany at AAPP, I said to them, I don't want this to be perfect because I want it to look like it would have right before the car was about to hit Mont Tremblant in 1988.
So the Turbo Cup series, well, that was a Canadian-only series, wasn't it?
Well, no. So Turbo Cup was worldwide. So they did it in France. They did it in South Africa, if I'm not mistaken. They did it in Germany. They produced 9 or 11 cars for the United States in 1987, but 88 was really the pinnacle of it when the guy named David Deacon said it in the video, but they basically, VW Canada, which is the Porsche importer, hired him as a marketing guy to get sales going. So he created a one-make series based on the cheapest Porsche, which was a 944 in 87. And then in 1988, Porsche wanted to add some noise to the car, so they built the Turbo Cup, which used a whole lot of magnesium parts and those sorts of things. And really, it's, to me, along with Group C racing, Porsche in Canada made the cars very, very low cost. I think they sold them at cost to the groups that were racing them. And then in doing that, they were able to win prize money. They were able to show off cars on television. Every dealership in Canada had to sponsor one of the cars, so it got the dealership involved as well. And honestly, it's the beginning of Porsche Cup racing. Following the 1989 or 90 season, Porsche Trans went to your car, the Carrera Cup, so 964s. And then the 944s kind of went away. And even though that happened, there's still a huge amount of passion for these 944 cars. The one that we showed in the video and the one that we did a series of 5 videos with the folks down at Dasport, and we went over specifics about what makes Turbo Cup cars special. That car just sold at auction for almost $200,000, and you were down there at the Porsche sale. It's an amazing car.
That is actually not that much for a factory.
It's
race
literally
car. It sounds like a lot, but to get a factory built race car,
and it's pretty good money. To my knowledge, they were the only 944s built at Weissach.
Yeah,
and they're really rad cars. I have driven like 6 of them now, I think, and they are absolutely awesome. And if I had the space, the money, and the time, I would absolutely have one in a collection at some point. But they are such cool cars, and the car that we did is. My goal with this is to show that we're able to, celebrate Porsche Classic, but being that the transaxle car is so underrepresented, I really wanted to do another transaxle car this year, and we're the only transaxle car in the entire competition this year. Last year there were 2 of us. My buddy Chad at Auto House Lancaster also did a 968, a 94, just like ours, but this year we're the only one, and it's a way harder car to work on than a lot of the other cars that are represented, and we were down for the task. The team at work did an awesome job. Every single technician in our shop worked on it. The body shop did an awesome job. It had mangled up front fenders. Somebody missed a jack point at one point, so we replaced the front fenders with Porsche Classic, and we just thoroughly went through the car. And other than a few small odds and ends, literally everything was available in that Classic catalog. We were able to get it from Germany or from somewhere in the United States. There were in some dealerships that had seal kits. I know we got our friends over at Porsche Annapolis provided us with, they had engine mounts in stock. So we were able to select those. And if I'm not mistaken, we got one of the upper end reseal kits we got from Champion Porsche. So they had it in stock. So dealerships are doing these things. They do support these cars, and it's important because these cars are, oh boy, you can see the cylinder bore scoring there, and that's the new case as it came from Germany, which was pretty awesome.
So it's really apparent and evident the support that you have from the dealership to do all of this. Not only was the project car absolutely stunning, but the fact that you had 6 other real Turbo Cups present for that. How many of those are even around these days? I mean, one of them was actually Ray's, right?
One of them was. So 2 of the cars there were owned by Bob Miller, who owns At Speed up here, actually just not far from where we're sitting right now. And then 4 of them were from Dasport. 2 of them were client vehicles, and 2 of them were personally owned. The interesting story about Ray's car, Hornbostel, which what it says on the back is that first time I drove on the racetrack, or I rode on the racetrack at Beaver Run back in almost 20 years to the day. It was June of 2003. I remember taking a picture of myself next to a cobalt blue 996 GT3. But I also had in that same stack of photos a picture of this red 944 that said Rothmans on the side of it. And I always knew that I had that. And about a month or so ago, I was digging through my pictures and I found that picture. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is Ray's car 20 years ago. So I sent it to him and he was pretty happy to see that. But yeah, it's a great
when I was club racing between 98 and 2010, it was very common to see Turbo Cup cars, 964 factory cup cars, 993 factory cup cars. They were not, at the time, anything rare. They weren't valuable like they are now. So people didn't think twice. They were like, heck, I'll get a factory prep race car and race that. And they were doing, if you've been to club racing, you know that everyone's risking their cars to win a $10 trophy. And God bless them, it makes for fun racing. But yeah, you didn't realize that these cars are going to become so valuable at some point. And now you rarely see it because these cars have become so valuable. But at the time, you didn't think twice about seeing a factory Rothmans or even like the Firehawk series cars.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was pretty common.
Now, you're obviously very passionate about this project and even the 968 project before that. But what does it mean to the dealership? Because you're not a classic center, I don't believe.
So when we recently moved into a new facility in January of this year, and we have the infrastructure in place for a dedicated classic area, which is one of the requirements to become classic.
Okay.
But the real kicker with classic is technician training. So while our techs are trained on everything new, the Porsche Classic training takes place on the West Coast, if I'm not mistaken, and it's very intensive. Very intensive. If I'm not mistaken, there's a couple of handfuls of dealers in the United States. I know my buddy Steve runs Gowden, and then the guys out at South Bay that I've worked with before. And I think the closest one to the Mid-Atlantic is Paul Miller.
Yeah, in Jersey.
Yep. But it's something we're striving for. But the reason that we do it as a dealership is kind of threefold. It's a great source of revenue for the parts department to showcase that we are able to gather these parts for these vehicles, be it 997s, 996s, E1 Cayenne, the whole way up through the whole way back to 356s. For the service department, it's a great opportunity for the guys and the ladies to work together to come to a really great team kind of get together with working on a project. It gives them a sense of happiness. You get to work on a Taycan, you get to work on a GT3, and then you also get to work on this awesome old project car. And when you see a finished project, it really gives people a sense of joy, sense of accomplishment.
Accomplishment, for sure. They were very proud on Saturday to be a part of it all.
For sure. And the sales department, it's basically, if depending upon the level of success that you get with the vehicle, you can earn extra allocation of sports cars from the manufacturer. And that in turn, the way that Porsche allocation works is if you earn 2 cars through a competition, let's say you own 2 911s based on share of nation and how allocation works for a Porsche dealership, you then in turn get 2 911s every year moving forward as long as Porsche still makes the same amount of cars.
Well, that's a pretty good carrot.
It is. So even though literally, other than the marketing and the passion that I have for the project, our service and parts department really absolutely knocked it out of the park, and our body shop did a tremendous job with the paintwork as well.
You don't have to be a classic center to get parts from.
Absolutely.
Any dealer can. I know we've ordered parts for Project 964 from dealers that were not classic center, but they sought the same access as a classic center would be to these parts.
So being that we're not a classic center, I can't really speak to all aspects of it, but a big part of it is to be able to provide a classic certificate for a car. So more than just getting what used to be called a certificate of origin or certificate of authenticity, now is a product specification sheet or something like that.
Yeah, like 2 levels, I think, right?
Yeah, so now there is if you go to a Porsche Classic dealership, you are able to have them thoroughly go through the vehicle, almost like a certified pre-owned inspection, to verify its originality and its to see what it warrants as far as the originality and the correctness of the vehicle, which is huge. You see, I was looking through an old Road and Track or something where I saw a Carrera lightweight, a 73 advertised for $59,000, back in like 1997, 1998. That's a $2 million car now. And being able to have the factory back that as far as verification and validation, that's a huge win. And it's certainly something that makes sense to go to somebody that's factory trained to make sure that they are able to validate that information.
So you were talking a little bit about allocations, and I knew today we wouldn't have enough time, and we'll have to have you come back to debunk all the myths and how all that stuff works. But let's move into just a little bit of the housekeeping. I know Robert will want me just to mention, if you're not signed up for eBreak News and all the other PCA newsletters, head over to pca.org. Sign up for eBreak News, MarkFresh News, as well as Performance News. We dropped a few videos since our last time together. We dropped the spring member-only raffle winner video. Thank you to the Allegheny region who worked together with Bogdan to surprise the gentleman at a DE.
And that was a perfect example of someone who did not look surprised.
Yeah.
And he was stunned.
He was stunned.
You could see his happiness when they gave him a second interview.
Right.
But initially, in Allegheny region did a great job of, they basically put the winner's face on a cookie and then handed everyone who had bought tickets that they were at a driver's ed event and like doing a barbecue at the end or on a Saturday night, and they handed everyone who bought a ticket a bag with the cookie, and when they told them, all right, everyone opened the cookie up to see who the winner is.
Yeah.
The guy who won was still struggling. He was still struggling trying to get the key, cookie open, and then he saw everyone started congratulating him, and then he opened up and saw his face.
He looks pretty happy.
Yeah, that was very well done.
Very cool.
Very well done.
But he was, you could see how stunned he was.
Yeah, and his last name is Wimer, and for the cookie they did it Winner.
I was going to ask if his last name was Winner. I was like, that makes sense.
Very cute. They did a fantastic job. We also put up on there when I was in one of our trips over in Germany, we visited Liqui Moly, and they took us kind of behind the scenes of the different products that they make for air-cooled as well as water-cooled cars. And then when we went to, I call it the bottling or canning facility, and I'm going to date myself here, but it reminded me of sort of the Laverne and Shirley introduction where all the cans and bottles are going through and they're getting filled and capped.
Very
and
cool.
It's a pretty
It's
cool.
bugged down what Laverne and Shirley
He has
is.
no idea. I bet you 90% of the folks that are in this office have no idea what Laverne and Shirley is. Quickly, let's talk a little bit about the news. And this is kind of cool. I know so many of us love like touring cars or wagons, and this one is a 911 Dakar version, a Sport Turismo.
Well, it's not the factory.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm saying this is like a imagined version, right?
This reminds me of the what was it? Singer. Remember, Singer did the off road, and then Porsche
The one that
told them
the one that they didn't do.
Yes,
It said Porsche on the side of it. And it
yeah.
lasted
Porsche
for like
told
2
them,
days.
no, that's going too far.
I'd buy that in a heartbeat.
That's so
that's,
cool.
Yep.
That looks really
Very,
cool.
very aggressive.
I mean, that's perfect to go to the grocery store.
That's the move right there.
That's
Oh,
the one
you
I
love
would.
that one.
That's the one
DK.
I would like to see. Is
But that
the,
was a
that was
real
a
Well,
DK.
those
That was a
DK
DP, was it?
D something.
DP Motorsport.
DP,
That's
yeah,
it,
he
yeah.
was the
That car,
station,
yeah,
station wagon
wagon.
924.
All about that.
That would have been a cool car.
Yeah.
I mean, the 924 or 944 is very functional. The hatch, that would have taken it to a different level.
Yeah. Put your bike in the back
So
of it.
I think in the video when we were at Technoclassica, Nathan Mers, we had a little spot of that car at the DP Motorsport booth, and that car was done so well. Same thing with this 920. I think in a video I took a few weeks ago at the museum. I have.
Yeah, that was at the Panamera launch we went to a bunch of years ago. Very cool car.
I think that was the see. We could have made this. So don't say the Panamera is ugly.
I've never said the Panamera is ugly.
I would own that. Well,
Oh,
Would you?
yeah.
928s are an interesting car, but I would own that.
I would rock it.
I'm not in love with that one.
You're not in
That
love
was
with that
almost
one?
like the four-door 911 back in '68.
That didn't.
Was it
turn-
Dick Troutman, the dealer, made?
That didn't turn out too well. On the next news bit is I can't believe I'm saying Restomod in the same digits as 997.
Yeah, I don't know. This one here, I looked at it for a while, and it's almost like, do you really want to mess with some iconic design? And the rear is
I gotta give them an A for effort and
misplaced effort.
and the fact that they have passion to do it, but I can't agree on how it looks. It's they
Just
tried
looks
to
like
take
a different bumper and
it almost looks like a
headlights.
toy.
The rear is what
The rear-
The
yeah.
rear is.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Sometimes mixing old school with new school isn't necessarily necessary. Anyways, but hey, I'm sure there's a market, there's a niche for
There's
it.
people that are bored with the 997.
And if they're available, I'm sure they will sell it. And what's the last one with KBB? I didn't see that one. The KBB
Oh, that was
one.
the article that came out like a week or 2 weeks ago about that the 911 will be the last
Oh, yeah.
car to go EV.
Yeah. But you know what? Much like the Boxster and the Cayenne, like there's regulations for them to have a certain percentage of cars that have to be EV and EPA standards and stuff like that. That when Macans, 718s, Cayennes, and this this K1 thing they're talking about, which is the 7-passenger EV Porsche, like that offsets their numbers so that if they decide to continue to make internal combustion engine versions of 911s, they can do so. Because
have you gotten any orders yet for this 7-passenger?
I have
K1?
no idea what you're talking about.
You know,
I can neither confirm. Actually, no, I don't. It's all.
I just can't see anybody running this saying that's what I wanted. Was a 7-passenger Porsche.
People have been asking for a long time for more seats.
They need the third row seat.
I remember telling Detlef on Platten when he was there with the 04 Cayenne, remember?
Yeah.
And he said, "What do you think?" I'm like, "I need 3 rows."
Well, you said not for your family.
I said, "I have 3 kids." And he said, "You can put 3 kids in the back seat." I'm like, "That's
why
World War III.
Yeah.
You need a third row seat if you're going to have peace."
Well, I think, you can stay neutral on this one, but I think the K1 is probably a shared platform of a 7-passenger vehicle that they will make available with Porsche engineering and badging, and you can finally have. Well, you don't need it now. Well, maybe you do with the grandchildren, but you can have that third row now.
But I honestly know nothing about it.
Oh, you don't?
Yeah, no, nothing. Okay. Nothing is the same guesses that everybody else has is what gets to us.
Here's a question I have for you, and I know we're kind of at the top of the hour here, but so when things like the ST or this K1 or Mission X, like when people get wind of something like this happens, but you haven't even heard about it from the dealer side, but someone is willing to write you a check for a deposit or place in line, how do you handle that?
Oh boy. So
whatever you're comfortable with sharing.
So when it comes to cars like an ST, in 2013, because of the 918
Circle,
Porsche basically gave the original procurers of those cars in the United States first right of refusal for every special car coming out forward.
Right.
So unfortunately, I was very close to selling one. I didn't sell a 918. So the majority of the super, super rare stuff that has come out, we never got. 911R, we sold a pre-owned one, but we never got a new one. Those sorts of things. So the majority of these cars get scooped up by those depositors because it makes all the sense in the world.
Of course.
Right.
Beyond that, will we get an ST? I have no idea.
Yeah.
We've got clients that have bought a considerable amount of cars from us who have expressed interest in them. I don't really take deposits on cars like that. We're happy to add them to an interest list, and when the time comes that if we do in fact receive the luxury of getting one of those vehicles, because it is really something great to be able to take a picture of something like that in front of your dealership.
Yeah.
But in all reality, will we get one? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I assume the struggle with Mission X, whatever they end up calling that car, is will the people who have the money to buy it, will they wait for a 918 Circle type of deal? But the 918 Circle didn't come out right away.
It did not. And they're not going to have any issues selling that car if or when that car does go into production, because that's just like any other super hyper car now.
The 918, they weren't selling that gangbusters, so they had competition also.
That was also a really weird time.
Right.
That was right at the tail end of all of the bad economy from 2008, 9, 10, and 11. Yeah. And there was all kinds of stuff occurring at that time, and they also I don't need to get into that, but it was a tremendous opportunity for those people that were able to buy that car originally and get invited to that group.
Yeah, and I would bet a large amount that it was successful for what they needed to do back then in that time to finish off the sales of the 918. Have a cadre of people that will be first right of refusal for all the amazing makes, and that part of purchasing the 918 was probably the best deal, was being on that list.
You could have paid for the 918.
Yeah, but I think with the way the current market stands and demand, like they don't need to do another Circle like that, and in fact they probably kind of would shoot themselves in the foot if they did.
I don't think that's going to come back again.
Yeah.
I think that
maybe there's hope. I would say that maybe this year or next year was probably towards the end, because I think it was 10 years.
But I don't think those customers are going to disappear.
We're very close.
Yeah, but
we're probably
they're not going to go away. But I think Porsche isn't. They don't have a contractual agreement that they have to offer it to them.
So when
first.
people say, "How do we get an allocation?" They'll ask me, and I'll say, "Listen, from what I've spoken to dealers, you have to create a relationship. They don't want to sell out of state. I'm not speaking for Casey or anybody.
Yeah.
Just what I've talked to dealers. They want to basically get your car back and sell it again themselves. They don't want to sell you if you're somewhere in Alabama and the car will disappear and they'll never see it again. They'd rather have create a relationship. I said that's usually might mean a used car.
Sure, they're looking at the long term. They're not looking for the short term sale because they have plenty of options to sell short term. They're looking for the long term relationship.
So here's a for instance, 2010, we received one allocation for a GT3 RS 4-liter. I couldn't find anybody that wanted the car. None of my local clients wanted the car. So I ended up selling it to a guy. It's funny you said Alabama, Louisiana, something like that. Car went down there. I never saw it again.
Yeah.
Look at getting a GT3 RS now. It's like divide by 0.
Yeah.
So that's really the difference in market between when 918 came out and now.
Yeah.
That's when I think cars were also suffering depreciation, which is like unheard of now.
Yeah.
But cars would
different times.
It was exactly. That's why I tell people the Courier GT was not a sales success initially.
Oh, we had 6 of them on the showroom floor.
They had to just like the 959. I mean, they had to. It was not immediate. In fact, the next panel, maybe this panel, has something about the supercars that I wrote, telling how they weren't immediate success, how they had to sell them because they had competition, and they could choose between the McLaren F1 when the 918 was out, and Ferrari
the P1,
or the P1 should be, and then in the I guess Ferrari would have been LaFerrari maybe.
Enzo was when Courier GT came
and
out.
Somebody at Porsche said there's only so many people in the world who have the money to drop $2 million on a car, $1.5 million, whatever.
And
the price
now
will be.
everybody that owns one of those cars owns all 3 of them.
Sure. Yeah, you got to.
And it's funny. People talk about, I remember in 2009 you could get a low mileage Courier GT for $300,000, but $300,000 in 2009 that was a.
I remember we had
it's still a significant amount of money.
We had our first. We do for a whole bunch of years. We always did these events for the 24 Hours of Daytona, and we borrowed one that my buddy Jay and I drove in the snow from Annapolis to the dealership, which was pretty harrowing. It was shooting off rooster tails.
Oh my God!
It was going down the Mulsanne Straight at Le Mans in the rain. But the gentleman that owned that car wanted to sell it. And if I'm not mistaken, the number was it had 980 miles on it ish, right around there. And he wanted around $300,000 for it.
If
we
only had a crystal ball.
I mean, you buy that 73 RS I was talking about too, but that now that's a $2+ million car.
I know.
But the thing that drives this up is that manufacturers don't make cars like that anymore. The only guy that makes a car close to something like a Courier GT is Gordon Murray, and those cars all sold out immediately.
I was going to say that's another getting line.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, speaking of getting in line, if you haven't already gotten your tickets for Rennsport, make sure you do so, because you definitely don't want to miss out all the wonderful cars that we typically talk about. Not only the production vehicles, but the race cars and the supercars and the 918s and all that. And more than likely, you'll get to see the Mission X and the latest offerings from Porsche at Rennsport Reunion 7. We just got a glimpse. I don't know if Manny shared it with Robert, but we have seen the volunteer shirts for Rennsport, and they look amazing. Yep. And you can only get one if you volunteer to be with us and help out at Rennsport.
It's a heck of a deal. You get a event, the official event poster, in a tube.
In the tube.
Which
the
I think is cool.
Helpful.
Exactly, because you won't get a crush carrying it around. And the shirt, and I think the shifts are between 3 and 4 hours.
And you'll have a lot of fun.
And you're going to be with other PCAers, and if you're parking cars, you're basically hanging out in the Cars and Coffee type parking lot, talking with other Porsche owners. And for 4 hours, it doesn't even seem like work. And if you work in the Porsche Platz area, then you're helping members find.
You'll be volunteering.
Your
time slot will be over, and you'll still be standing there.
Yes, exactly.
having fun. For those of you East Coasters that aren't making the trek to Rennsport, it's not exactly Rennsport, but we're gonna.
That is a stretch.
but
we don't have Brad Pitt, but we have Manny Alder.
But it is too almost sold out, and that is the PCA Open House on September September 9th, I believe, is our open house. Yeah.
Yeah, I think by the time this comes out, it may be sold out. It's going to be packed.
It's
always I look forward to coming.
Yeah, and
maybe
hopefully,
I can bring the project car up.
That's what I was going to say, is maybe you can bring the project car. Parade laps for Winsport Reunion 7, a few, I think Thursday and Sunday are still available.
So, yes.
Yeah.
Still.
So with that, Casey, thank you so much for joining us. As I said, there's still other topics we would love to bring you back and sort of again demystify.
We know where he lives.
We know where he lives, and thank you for all of your support. Every time something new has come out or something interesting has come on your lot, you are the first to just give me a buzz or text and say, "Vu, Damon, Manny, come down here and check this out." So thank you for all those opportunities, and we look forward to many more opportunities in the future. Manny, with that, anything else before we wrap it up? Nope. All right. So thank you for listening. If you aren't currently a PCA member and own a Porsche, grab that VIN and head over to PCA.org and we'll set you up with the membership. If you're looking for your first Porsche, maybe call Casey or join the PCA test drive program where we can give you the ins and outs of everything Porsche. We've been working with Bogdan here because I think he's going in between selling his car and maybe acquiring something new, and hopefully he finds a P car in his future. If you want to follow what's going on our Instagram, the podcast Instagram page, just go over to Porsche Club Insider, all one word. We really appreciate all of your support. For those that are watching on YouTube, make sure you click like, comment, subscribe, help us get to that 100,000 subscriber mark. That would mean a lot to us. Until next time, stay safe and we'll catch you down the road.